Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tarah Wheeler.
Hi, folks. It is a pleasure to welcome you back here again to Cybersecurity Office Hours. I'm Tarah Wheeler, Red Queen Dynamics' CEO, and I am joined this week by a fabulous human being, colleague, and I swear to God, long lost brother at this point. Matt Lee is Senior Director of Security and Compliance at PAX 8. We get a chance to talk this week with Matt, who is a passionate cybersecurity educator, a content creator, and a practitioner on a mission. If our collective children are to have the same predictable way of life, the entire world has to grow in the understanding of cybersecurity. He spends his days creating content, speaking with partners, vendors, and partner clients alike in order to do a small part to raise the tide in our technology world. He spent 10 years at a rapidly growing MSP and learned the hard way that threat actors are winning at an alarming pace. Let him know how he can help you. We'll give you that contact information later on in the show. And of course, he says to everybody here, thanks for stopping by. You rock. Matt, it is so great to have you aboard with us today. How's it going, my friend?
Wow. I mean, that was an intro. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I do feel this whole long lost sister in this fight we're both in, right? Like we have this same conversation and understanding of our world has been built on convenience and on the next net revenue dollar to make some product, which is great. That's the beauty of capitalism. But we have also built a less secure, not focused on the things that matter, on how we continue to keep this amazing growth we are as a nation. And we're watching, 15 trillion or so fall out the back end from every country in the world to cybersecurity. So yeah, great intro. I'm on a mission for sure. And we have a similar mission. So
I appreciate it. And it's at least partially, we had this conversation. I've had this conversation before with other great people, not only on the show, but just, in real life, Jason Slagle, other amazing people where, we all are kind of in different parts of this industry in information security. And, as somebody who kind of started in very corporate information security and then kind of circled back around the back way again and kind of did the dirty skanky stuff we don't talk about, and then back again the other direction, and all kinds of fun. One of the things I've really seen is there is such a massive divide between the practices, processes, and expectations of people who are in heavy duty, big company, enterprise information security, and the idea of protecting a company that you're not part of as an MSP.
Sure.
And that is it's such a disconnect. The culture is fascinating. What are some of the changes and the culture splits that you've noticed?
You even mentioned this enterprise understanding and somewhat maturity around some of these concepts, right? That you're familiar with having the conversation. And even they suck at this, right? So let's just start with that first statement, is even they aren't good at this. But I have seen culturally this growth in the understanding of the problem, right? Over the last 2 years, and you can go back and look at some of my annual predictions, MSPs have grown to understand that there's this giant gap in risk. They're starting to understand that there's these giant gaps in their own security delivery. They're starting to understand these things and go down that path. But then to your point, they still haven't really grasped this understanding of how do I then execute this as a outside advisor to this company? I can work on my stuff and I can sell products and things, but how do I actually be that vCISO? How do I be that advisor? And that's the big gap, I think, still, that's a cultural divide, that the enterprise at least has those people inside. Now, are they effective? Is it scalable? Do they have the ability to address all the stakeholders? That's a whole different ball of wax. But I think I'll make a prediction. I think if MSPs lean into this, they will probably solve it faster than enterprise will. And that's a bold statement, but I believe they can.
That's a bold statement.
I know.
I love it. I love it. And I love it because it's individualized. One of the things that I've had to make clear about what we're doing is that we don't get in the middle of the relationships between MSPs and SMBs. And that's because, small to medium sized businesses, they're unique. They're snowflakes, and there's no way to substitute for they think they do. There's no way to substitute for the relationship building and knowing what your clients and your market segment needs. And I think that MSPs could be better at it. They've got the opportunity to have a more targeted message for sure.
Yeah, and a smaller and less, and I hate to say this, I don't mean this trivially, less complex problem, right? At least in the micro unit, at that one client that has 50 seats, let's say, I can address that problem in a fairly linear fashion. Like it's going to be fairly easy to figure out their problems, sort them out, get the stakeholders involved, make the decisions, guide them down a path. When you do that at an enterprise level, I have 55 stakeholders that all have different interests, competing thoughts, their own desires and drive. And you could probably speak to that better than I can, Tara, just in your world. But in the small market, when the MSPs figure it out, I think they'll just be very good at delivering that, right? And I think you get to see that more than I do in the vCISO work y'all do. But I think they'll just be very good at churning through those challenges with their customers and coming to an 85% solution, if you will.
And the
for some of these
85%
things.
solutions is fine. That's fine. That's great. It's
Yeah,
better than, it's not only is it better than nothing, but you do the bottom 85% of security, you're
yeah.
great. I love it. That's
Me and you
wonderful.
agree again, yet again. So yes,
I
agreed.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
I want that. I want to see that happen. And, with what we do and the way that we try to serve, the VCSOs, the MSPs and MSSPs, the communities like this, what I've seen so far is this crazy split between an understanding of what's happening in the real world and information security on a ground level and what policymakers do. Because
sure.
my two worlds really, like I live in this world of small to mid-sized business and keeping them safe. And then every once in a while I go dip my toe in this world where, we're talking about international conflict enabled by computers. And the people who are trying to solve these problems at an international level and national level, they're thinking in terms of the supply chain for the defense industrial
Sure.
base. They're thinking in
Yeah.
terms of and their idea of solutions is, and we've had this conversation before a couple of times, things like mandating secure by design software,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. It's great that that's the case, but that doesn't save anybody at the level of a 30-person trucking company in Iowa.
Yeah.
That doesn't fix the problem, which is
Uh,
that we got people that aren't safe and don't know how to be safe. Their
it's
MSPs can
true.
keep them safe. Now they got to learn to care about it.
Yeah. This is where I might even agree but differ a little bit
Yo,
on
do.
secure by design and secure by default as this mantra, as a target or goal. I think is probably the right answer. I think as a target or goal. I think to your point, at a tactical level today, where does that impact happen? And I think that's the gap. But I'll give an example where it does matter. And at some point, you have this thing where everybody says, well, if I keep moving all my things to Microsoft, or if I keep moving all my things to Google or AWS or whatever those may be, then now I have one place that if they make mistakes, I get screwed. True story. Shared responsibility matrix, understanding, vendor lock-in, all those statements become true. But if I'm looking at this from trying to solve the problem at a number perspective, I've got one giant throat to choke. That I have the ability to call into those capabilities, or 3 or 6
Yeah.
giant throats to choke the hell out of. So I
Mhm.
think from that perspective, there is an aspect of secure by design that's fundamentally broken today. I've had executives say to me, Tara, Matt, I don't know why I should put security and vulnerability management into my product sprints every month because a lot of money's made on shitty software. True
Mhm.
story. We are financially rewarding people for having crap code that I then get to be destroyed by. But you saw there was a case against Assurion Health, I think it was,
Right. Mhm.
saying, hey, your software sucked. This person got breached. You are actually liable, and they're not. And it's a very interesting world, I think, that's shaping up of at some point I have to be able to trust my code. But to your point, if you don't educate or drive those people down a path, and MSPs are the best way to do that at the SMB
Yeah.
world, to use these things, to use them right, to take advantage of those things until secure by default catches up, right? And this is the other problem that's out there, which is, yes, this code, let's say Microsoft 365 Business Premium, has all
Mhm.
these things I can do. None of them are on. I buy this car and
I
the
know.
airbags aren't on, ABS isn't set, right? Like
Yeah.
it's broken. It's fundamentally broken. So yeah, okay. I'm agreeing with you,
Mhm.
but I wanted to go down a different path for that agreement, I suppose is my
I
point.
I love it. I love the one throat to choke on that one because I love there's a price to having power centralized in the large software vendors and creators, right? There's a price right there, and this is
Yep.
your price: is that you get to be the one sitting there, with a little placard
Congress,
in front
come
of you,
talk to Congress and let's talk
you
about
know.
why you did this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so False Claims Act lawsuits, all
Yeah.
kinds of things that can come into that, consumer safety lawsuits, things that can come into that down the road. So
Mhm.
I that's my belief. That's my personal opinions of where this goes. And we all have our thoughts, obviously, as practitioners. But
Yeah.
um, evils
It's a
come with
hard
that
one.
too. Yeah,
They
so,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, evils come with that too. Which is that it's very easy, I think, for some of the larger software creators to discover this as a market opportunity and try to sprinkle some AI over it to solve the problem is where I'm seeing some of this. I love the idea of having new AI enabled tools, which
Sure.
can walk people through, like we do it too, right? Which gives an opportunity to walk people through simple security hygiene that targets a tool where it's required and needed. And at the same time, this adds another layer of complexity. It's almost like we're pushing complexity towards being part of the last mile problem.
Yeah.
And that complexity at that local level, does
Yeah.
every 3-person MSP have the capacity to configure, business premium and also handle like configurations in Copilot, or explain to a small business the implications of the contract's liabilities if they
Oh
want to
yeah.
throw a chatbot up on their site to actually interact with the public? So yeah, it's super yeah, exactly. The opportunity to answer. So, Senator, we
Yeah.
sell ads. you know, I
Oh, it's
mean,
perfect.
oh,
That's
I thought this
perfect.
was for for humanity, right? No,
Oh,
nobody's launching a space. Well, people are launching a spacecraft here, but so I
yeah.
guess, Matt, as we look at this, as we're seeing some of the good trends that exist out there, do you see any more dangerous trends that are
Yes.
hitting MSPs and VCs? So is at this level where it's
God
this
bless.
layer that's really trying to navigate and interlocute between all the threats and challenges, and a woman just trying to run her accounting firm.
Yes.
What are the challenges there? What's getting worse, not better?
You walk through an airport and you see an ad for one of 3 MDR vendors or one of 4 mail vendors, and it's this whole concept of, like, I want to sometimes say the Billy Madison answer, right? The, like, everybody's dumber for having listened to this. May God have mercy on your soul, right? I award you no points. And the guy's like, a simple no would have sufficed, right? But the point is like, I feel that way sometimes, and it's really this lend towards, we can stop all threats, buy this tool and you're good, take care of this and you're fine. And it's all these like very summative and making people stupid statements that make it harder for someone to come in and say, no, there's a lot of nuance to this, and there's things we need to work on, we need to come up with strategies, we need to make some decisions on risk, we need to, right, to that person running that business, they've just been told in the airport that this stops all threats. Why are you even telling me this, Tara? Why do you even think we need to talk about these things? Well, my airport just told them I'm good. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
part of the biggest problem that I think is still damaging, is we haven't focused on, to the practitioner, certainly the things that matter, but also a more realistic approach to cybersecurity to the consumer of, hey, let's find the bad guys or gals first. Let's react better. Let's find ways to detect. Let's focus on those things in a way that are more meaningful and realistic. I make an analogy of a coaching football. If I were in a professional coach at a football team and I walked out and said, I'm not going to allow a single yard as a defensive coach, like, everybody's going to look at me and say I'm an idiot, right? Because it's stupid. And yet in cyber, we say it all the time, right?
Yeah.
We say, hey, listen, we'll stop all threats. How? It's not even possible or feasible. Okay.
Well, that right there, I've got to ask you, is that message one that is just not landing? Because does an MSP not have the capacity to deliver that message and have it get heard by a small business? How do you go to one of your clients
Mm,
and say to them, I want you to understand that you're going to get breached eventually. And
yeah.
what we're going to do is we're going to build you defenses in depth so that we find it as soon as possible and remediate it as
Limit
quickly
its
as possible
damage.
and limit
Right.
its damage and get you some cyber insurance with some decent standards on it so that whatever's left over you do get paid out on. How is that a palatable message to someone who's like, well, why can't you just take it off the internet?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you get that message across? Is the problem that MSPs don't have a method of delivering that message? Do they just not have any backup?
I think there's a bigger potential issue. I don't know if you're familiar with Alyssa Miller,
Oh yeah.
but Alyssa Sack, and she did a presentation on stage at Wild West Hackenfest like 2 years ago or so, and she said, we're told our whole lives as CISOs that the language of business is risk, and then she said, horse crap. The language of business is profit, pure unadulterated profit. And in the context of a nonprofit, it's mission, right? But at the end of the day, we're speaking the wrong language. She furthermore said, when they started that company, they took on all the risk. The minute that I took on this company, I already has the risk. So all you're really doing is selling me, reducing some risk thing that I'm not really already familiar with and I'm already making profit with it out there. Like, what are you selling me? So I think the problem at least starts in, how does the language change towards helping people understand and make decisions upon this risk as it grows over time, right? We're seeing larger growth of that risk and its impact over time. So I think that's the first piece. To your point, though, the MSPs that get good at saying what you just said, are finding it landing. And I actually would turn this question back around on you from that respect of, Tara, like you're delivering that message. Is it landing when you work with these MSPs and their partners?
Yeah. And this is a rough challenge. I think it lands. Like, I was having a great conversation with an incredible. I don't want to give his identity away. Yesterday, I was having this conversation with a practitioner, incredible human being, deeply, deeply admired. He's more private. He does a lot of work in keeping people safe than some of the more targeted people on the internet. And I said, I feel like the people that you've worked with, people who've been digitally stalked, harassed, lost profound amounts of their identity on the internet, I feel like they understand in their core that there's no way to stop everything.
Sure.
When you start with basic cyber hygiene, and you say this is going to reduce your risk, I feel like they understand that if we can make the most marginalized people in our society, the ones who are facing the most problematic elements of the internet, get that. I feel like there's also a way for you, as a person who also does this work with businesses, to go to those businesses and say, your risk can never be reduced to zero unless you want to go
100%.
out of business.
Yeah,
if you want to go out of business,
right.
You can have no risk.
Yeah, we could
And
we could put all this
lands.
data, lock it in a vault,
Yeah.
and you'll be great. It's going to be fine. You can't operate.
And
to
that's
your point.
and Alyssa's a dear friend. She's been over here a lot. She's wonderful human
Brilliant
being.
human.
And
Says it the way it is.
I love her. I love her so much. She's also a
Yeah.
pilot, and I think she's amazing.
She's really cool.
When she says the language of business is risk. Well, so here's the thing that breaks out into the expected utility equation, right?
Okay,
The expected utility. So I come out of academic game theory, and expected utility is in essence the same risk calculus we all do. It is the impact of an event in whatever kind of points you want to count it in, usually dollars, times the impact of that, times the probability of that event occurring, equals the expected utility of proceeding as if that is going to happen. If you have an event that, if it happened, would cost $10,000, but the probability of it happening is 10% over the course of a year, then what you've got there is a $1,000 risk, okay, for the course of the year. That's an expected utility equation, and it's how it breaks out. So when you break that out, if you're counting in money, Alyssa's getting right to the heart of the problem, which is that what business owners want to understand is, what is the actual cost of one of these events happening, and what is the probability of that event happening and me having to deal with it? Because if it's this is the hard part, I think, Matt. I think this is gonna resonate with you. I think you have probably dealt before with business leaders who once we explained to them what would happen in a cyber attack, that it would take everything away from them. That they think of it as an existential event, and to them there is no acceptable probability of an event occurring.
Fair.
That's the problem that keeps happening, and we keep having to say to them, "There's no way to escape it." That's the
right way to say it. Yeah. That's the right way to say it. God bless you. Yes. What I mean by that is, like, I've done simulations, and I think tabletops are extremely effective at taking people down this emotional journey, right? It's not an academic journey. It's an emotional journey. It's okay, you've now been compromised. My next step is to take all of these offline. I'm going to have to do this for the next X days until we have our team from the DFIR company come in and get involved in pull forensics. You haven't elected in having a HA backup or capability. So we're going to be making nothing right now. So for the next 2 days, I want you to have nothing happening. Just picture that. Well, no, that's unacceptable. Well, what's the likelihood of that happening? 10%, to Tara's point. No, that's not okay. But if you just ask me to make a risk-based decision without any of that context and say 10%, 10% sounds really low. But it just is a matter of the context. I do love that statement. So
they have to understand the impact. Yeah, they've got to understand the impact of it. And when you measure it for a business owner, it's going to end up getting measured in the end in money, in foregone opportunity, in risk of an event occurring versus the time of it. So, and it's image. There's a bunch of things that are part of that calculation, but there's no business owner that cares if image is involved, if it has no impact on bottom line. Ultimately, they're all using different words to say the same thing. Business go on, business not go on.
Yeah. What's interesting, and then we'll get to Joel's point, is if you look at the stock price of 23andMe ever since their event. Now, they'd already been on a bit of a decline if you look back a year. But there's a precipitous event that has not been recovered from since their disclosure of the breach of 23andMe's millions of customers' potential DNA data, right? Which is not so lovely. And so, you get into that point where we are starting to see a world where ROI and bottom line can be directly impacted by a decision to fail in that area, right? And I love that. I mean, I hate that and love that in my point. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love Joel's note on this one right here too. And this is really the question, right? Is it's so closely related to the security poverty line from Wendy Nather, who's been a guest on this before as well too. But Joel's point here that the idea is to raise the cost of attacking you beyond the point where there's ROI for a criminal to get into your system, and that's the answer. It's literally the answer.
Yeah, that is literally the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I do love the ROI based approach to that focus too. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. It's just change your DNA and get DNA monitoring.
Yeah,
services.
no problem. I'll just be switching off. DNA. I just need new ones. That worked out well for every Marvel's video I've watched.
Oh God, Marvel's videos. This is the point of it, I think, and I look at how people keep trying to make this situation more complex without really understanding the underlying element of security, which is that it is never about computers. It is always about people. And the biggest hacks are the ones that trick people into doing things. The biggest hack, the biggest $25 million hack of the last couple of months was the assistant in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And it was a deep fake Zoom video. And you know what? It's promising that somebody still had to do the authorization. I'm a little concerned that it took there was no additional financial controls on one person transferring $25 million out of that organization. And that's where we talk about defense in depth, right? Is one of the key things cyber insurers are always asking about is, does it require two people sign off to transfer more than $25,000 out of the core business bank account?
Sure.
And it's a great question because it really goes to that. And that's a security question.
It's a non-technical control, right? That's an administrative control. Yeah.
It is, but it's not included on any of the cybersecurity frameworks I've ever seen. It's only in cyber insurance questionnaires for applying to and maintaining cyber insurance.
I don't know why. Them. Like I ad-lib them into the safeguards. I'm like, yes, this is what they really mean. You're 100% right. Yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah. So 23andMe is declining as a result of that, and they've not recovered from it. It used to be, even just 5 years ago, that breaches, they jiggle the stock price a little bit, but they were a nothing burger because no one really believed that there was any actual impact to them. CISO still got fired, but that was really the thing that made line go back up again, I think. And I don't know, are the consequences different now that there's the new SEC regulations around, especially public companies? It's a bigger market than we're usually talking about, Matt, you and me, but are the consequences different now? Do you see that starting to trickle down for criminal and civil liability?
Well, it's changing in a lot of ways, right? Like, think about what we've seen since the 8K filing requirement, right? Like, you now see, like, everybody, like you saw, like, look at the Change Healthcare. We've been hit by a nation state actor. You didn't know that in that first 4 hours, but they were writing it, damn it, and they were authoring history. I think to the point you're just seeing so many things get brought to the light that we wouldn't have seen, that you would have seen, or that others would have seen, but never would it have been in the light. So there's that part. I think you also see this weird motion of DOJ, SEC around the lawsuits and or criminal charges for CISOs. And even to your point before, the CISO gets fired and they moved on. It probably wasn't the CISO that was the problem. Like it probably was budget and governance and all of those things that were the problem, right? Like, and executive support. And anyways, so I think that is going to drive, what comes to light will drive change. Think about back to Alyssa and the airplanes. The NTSB investigates every crash. Right? And afterwards you come out with, this is what happened. Pilot error. Nope. This was a problem with the part. This was whatever it is. They came out and we made a change and we moved forward. We've been making changes to frameworks without any data about breaches coming back because people kept it tight-lipped. So, gosh, there's a lot to unpack in that question, Tara. But
there is.
I do think it's changing, and it's changing for positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, ultimately, is my guess.
About 2 months ago, I had a wee little conversation with the U.S. Senate on precisely that topic because I'm also a student pilot and doing this work, and that's up and around there someplace too on our channel. But this point exactly, which is that the aviation community accumulates knowledge and becomes incrementally responsible for it as a regulation has changed. We all have the obligation and opportunity to learn
Yep.
every single year from previous year's mistakes. And it's coming really close to a time when in cybersecurity, our regulations are going to be written in blood. And I think we're heading in that direction really quickly. We got
Whoever's
some
writing
wise
these on the
asses
back
back
end
again.
is like seriously crushing it right now. Like, I mean, just on point.
It's our great guys back there. It's Ian Meyer and Jason
Oh,
Crafton
they're
back
so
there,
good.
in
So
production, and
good.
they're just sitting back there. We got MST 3K happening. You know what? That is a great idea for a future one of these broadcasts. Honestly, it's just like scrolling text down there. Like, how bad is it going to get? Yeah, it's a crazy and difficult time, and yet I look at this and I say to myself, how do we circle down and pinpoint just the CISOs in terms of blame? You look at
Yeah,
SolarWinds
it's
and you see that
ridiculous.
I was actually wrong on this one. Once I had posted, hey, the CEO and CISO of SolarWinds were charged, but not the person between them, the person who was
Mm-hmm.
the CISO's boss. Turns out it actually wasn't even the CEO that was charged. It was just the company as a whole and the
Yep.
CISO, who is at L3 in that company. So
Yeah.
you want to explain to me how you are charging a person who was not given sufficient budget, sufficient capacity, and sufficient leadership support or access to the board to report the level of problems they were experiencing, and yet they're the ones facing the charges
It's
in a
crazy.
case like this. It's crazy, and yet this is heading in the direction of being something that is a legal remedy
Yep.
for private companies in this country. And now I got to get to a thing that you and I were both howling
Oh.
about on LinkedIn this week.
Yep.
So, Matt, you want to just take it away? Like, I feel like
Yeah, let's
you have
do
a
it.
better understanding of it, please. But like,
Okay.
folks, talk about
Yeah.
your lawsuits. Go to town.
Yeah, and then
Explain
this
what's
is
going on.
this is
Yeah.
this is the third or fourth time I've talked about this, but in
Mm-hmm.
essence, a client of an MSP, a law firm Stagny Holstead in Sacramento, was suing Landtech LLC, a privately owned Sacramento company, as stated in this article, and basically are saying and alleging that there is $1 million worth of damages that have been caused by this MSP not meeting their contractual obligations. Well, what contractual obligations, you might ask? None. In their argument and statement, oral, and this is never as plain as this is, so if you're with Landtech and you're watching this, understand we're left to only pick from what's in the news. I add this as my clause because I was doing a talk called How I Would Hack You and talked about a certain event, and the MSP finally came up to me and said, that's not exactly right. I'm like, well, you didn't put the information out. So I wanted to at least state that this is what we're getting from the news. But this conversation is saying that Black Bastard ransomware gang made a ransom of aggression and also potentially encryption of their data, but also was able to manipulate the backup, the Acronis backup, to destroy that backup and also exfil, from what I understand from that, which again, take with a grain of salt. There's not a lot of data out about this yet. And so as part of this lawsuit, they've sued both the MSP and saying that you should have actually stopped this, you should have known it, you should have been responsible for it, statements there. And then also Acronis as a responsibility holder in their mind as well for potentially, and this is scuttlebutt, but potentially the software itself having things that were utilized to destroy that backup. Now, that may not be true, right? It may have been credentials, there may be other things, so understand this is completely unknown. But the point is, you're seeing a lawsuit, Tara, and they are suing for $1 million post-event, saying you're responsible, you should have caught this. So the things I take away out of this in my mind initially, like immediately, are A, you need to have a great understanding of your contractual obligations between you and your client. There's also a giant gap in shared responsibility matrix across the board, like let alone MSAs and managed service agreements. But now, like, what about this non-granularity and non-binary nature of things I'm responsible for? Like, am I responsible for a ticket that you called in that said, hey, the network's running slow? Do I need to have already had an incident response capability to say, this looks like a root cause of egression of data and we need to actually do something to do forward? Like, where is that line? Has that been drawn in your MSA? Do you have those capabilities? Are you saying you have those capabilities, right? Tara, in the LinkedIn chat, somebody went off saying, we're teaching MSPs about security? This is stupid. They need to, well, but is it? In the SMB world, they already think they wear the whole hat. They already assume that they do.
Right there.
Yeah, anyways.
Yes.
Yeah, you go.
That's exact. They assume they wear the whole hat for security, for IT, because to somebody who's in small business, there's no difference between somebody who is
100%.
giving you a computer and somebody who's keeping your computer safe from like all of the hackers. There's no differentiation between, and there's no understanding that an MSP and an MSSP are two different things for
Bro,
a small
preach it.
business owner.
All right,
Oh
I'm
my
done
God.
here. I'm done
So,
here. That's it.
right,
We've got it. We've nailed the world.
can I
We've
get
just
a
fixed the
witness?
world.
We're going to fix the world on this one. So I look at this, and I've talked to small business owners, and to them, they have outsourced the concept of keeping of the responsibility for their IT to the firm that they've chosen. And I've gone to them before and said, do you understand that you may have, for instance, a business attorney for your business, but if you have something that is a special case, that you would go
Mhm.
to somebody specialized in that
Yeah.
kind of the
A
law.
breach
And
counsel or
a
a whatever
breach
it might
counsel.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. Employment attorney. You got a problem with an employee, you
Yeah,
get an
yeah. A
employment attorney.
specialist
You
in
got
a state you're about to do business in, a specialist in a
absolutely.
country. I mean, exactly those statements. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
exactly. But to them, it's the same thing as you talk to a dermatologist, at a party, and they've got an MD. They're a
right.
doctor, and you talk to a dermatologist at the party, and you're like, hey, something seems, I got a bum ticker. You want to listen in for a second? And the
Yeah. I'm a
dermatologist is like, I'm
dentist,
not a
but sure, bro, I got
yeah,
this. Or I'm a
sure.
dermatologist. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
geez.
the answer is, everyone has their different specialties. There's a baseline
Yeah.
understanding that everybody's going to have, but it's going to be like, are you standing upright? Can you stand up, see lightning and hear thunder? Okay, you're probably doing pretty all right. How's the heart rate going?
Yeah.
There's basic elements of health, but beyond that, keeping you safe, keeping your data safe, understanding how to help you do attestations for security, for your cyber insurance, for your vendor assessment processes.
Yep.
That's beyond the capability of most MSPs. They
Yeah.
are usually going to an MSSP or a vCISO to advise them on providing some of this as a product to their small
Yep.
businesses. Now, for this particular situation, which is so fascinating, the there's a question as to whether or not the issue would lie with the vendor of the backup software or with the MSP for not knowing that
Yeah.
they were using a vendor that had a problem. Now, that's an interesting question, but what concerns me is this. First of all, God love them. They had an oral agreement with a law firm as their
With an attorney.
contract
Yeah.
with an attorney.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
That's what I've surmised as well from this understanding. Yeah. It's
so
terrifying.
there's that. You do have to have a very clear contract with your clients expressing what is and isn't your responsibility.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
challenge really, I think, comes in, is it okay to sue an MSP for doing a shit job? And the answer is, I think they have to be demonstrated to be in breach of contract or
Yep.
in breach of the law. And right now,
There's not
it's
much
very
of the
difficult to
latter.
tell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's difficult to tell what best practices are. Yeah, sure, NIST,
Yeah.
but
Sure.
I mean, as a person who's been dealing with a bunch of compliance frameworks for a long time, compensating controls plus some degree of supervision means that somebody doing NIST could be doing a far better job than someone else doing NIST.
True story.
And
True
it's
story.
very difficult to tell the difference between those two things. Now, if they're in breach of
Yeah.
a contract and they promise that they have incident response capability and they do not, then that's a very different situation.
That's true. And they are
So,
technically in an oral contract that now gets to be argued out in the place
mhm,
of law and emails and historical evidence and things to that nature that can call
mhm,
up a whole host of other challenges. Back to your core question, though, is it
yeah,
okay to sue?
yeah,
I think one of the things that I see playing out, and I'm a strategy guy, I like to say I have the luxury of being a theorist. But if you see the National Cybersecurity Strategy as its modifications from 2018 to 2023, and you see this conversation in bullet point 3.1 from a strategy, which is hold the stewards of our data more accountable, and 3 and the remainders of pillar 3 start to go into saying maybe it's these service providers that need to be held accountable. You combine that also with CIRCIA, Critical Information
mhm,
and Reporting Act, that is the first document that I know of that named MSPs in its very right. If you look into CIRCIA and the Critical Infrastructure Reporting Act, you're seeing MSPs defined. I think it's sub-bullet 12 or something of that nature. But ultimately, I think the winds of change are driving to the point of it's back to that bigger throat to choke statement that I made earlier in a microcosm. Right now, it's I can
yeah,
manage that MSP and require a certain base standard. To your point. So
mhm,
today, there's not laws, there's not governance, there is
no,
nothing that really exists. And so, to your point, it's whatever you write in your contract. And I think that's the biggest takeaway today, with an understanding that the future seems to paint a picture that you are going to be responsible for having a certain level of base accountability to doing standards that are out there. And to your
mhm,
point, even if I suck at NIST, and I'll take this to another example,
Sure.
There are shitty attorneys out there, but they
Yes,
are
there
above
are.
the bar. But they
Hmm.
are above the bar.
Hmm.
They are at least following that framework to the point of being a bad NIST practitioner when you might be a great NIST practitioner, right? Like, but at least you're a NIST practitioner, damn it, or a CIS or a name it, right, to your framework of choice. But yeah, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
good pulpit.
No, don't be sorry. That's the point of all of this. What scares me is this right here, which is that, best practice, do care, all these things in information security really are what you can convince them when they are. And the problem is that there's no backstop for that except for legislation. And our challenge with legislation is we have got a crew
Oh,
of people in Washington, D.C. right now
oh,
thinking that banning TikTok is going to save US user
oh!
privacy.
I've got a whole talk coming on that.
Oh,
I have a
yeah.
whole talk coming on that. Me and
Okay.
former FBI agent Darren Mott are going to get together and play that football game. But you're right.
Yeah.
It is incongruent. If you
Hmm.
asked me gun to head what Matt Lee's plan would be for a lot of this,
Sure.
it would be to shift a self-regulatory type organization and body of standards that
Hmm.
very much like FINRA or BAR or ADA or AMA or PCI DSS itself did this. But if you would approve some set of standards that then is that bare minimum, you can solve a couple of problems. And I'm painting these curves as if they're very simple. I hope you understand I'm being summative.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to start saying, I don't care if you're an MSP or if you're a company, you will need to be able to show these capabilities, whatever those are. And that might mean you do it internally, and that means Tarah has to be licensed to do that
Hmm.
inside your organization. Or you might hire an MSP, and Tarah is going to come with that MSP and bring her license to that capability, which now starts setting, because if you just regulated the MSP, you're not going to do anything. They'll just hire internally. You have to regulate this whole desired outcome, much in the way that NCSC is doing CAF or the Cyber Assessment Framework, seeing those type of actions play out over time that, to your point, start setting at least a baseline of crappiness, right? Like we're at least at this
Oh, I
level.
love that.
like,
A baseline of crappiness. Now I want to do a talk with you, and it's going to be called A Baseline of Crappiness.
let's do it.
I love this idea, but I genuinely love this idea because right now, with no baseline of crappiness,
Yeah,
I'm reminded of a conversation I once had with one of the heads of cybersecurity at the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which sets a bunch of these digital standards for
sure.
basically rich countries. And he was like, the problem we keep having with the cybersecurity industry and community is we can go to any other community. We can go to dentists, we can go to
Sure.
lawyers, we can go to construction workers, and we can say, in
Sure.
your industry, have you among yourself all agreed what a set of best practices are, and throw people out of your industry if
Yes.
they don't abide by those. And they
Yes.
say, and what my friend says to me, he says, we can go to any of those industries and say, send us representatives of your field, of your community that
Absolutely.
understand these best practices, and we will help you, get them spread, get them codified. We go to the cybersecurity community, and the only thing we see is infighting.
Yes.
We
And
don't,
zero
there's no
trust
agreement and no trust,
or
not the
AI
not the
solves
good kind of
this or
zero
yeah,
trust.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're 100%
Yeah.
right. That's a great call out. And I agree with
Hmm.
that wholeheartedly. That is
Yeah.
one of the
The
gaps. And
baseline.
I think, I'm part of a couple things trying to solve this, but that's the problem. There's hundreds of people trying to solve this. There is no unified piece.
Hmm.
And I think the common difference there is AMA has had a congressional appointment of some form.
Hmm.
PCI DSS was recognized as an industry standard at some point, and modest treatise on the minimum viable crappiness for barely not crappy cybersecurity program at me. That's a title. That's a good one. A
We
modest
got it.
treatise. Yes.
MVC, minimum viable crappiness.
Yeah, MVC. I love it. We're just trying to get to an MVC here, folks. One MVC, damn it. That's the call to action.
it's it's
Uh,
it's absolutely that. And I look at the situation that we see here, for MSPs and small businesses, and if I was going to ask you, we could sit here and bitch and moan all day long, and we will.
sure. Yeah,
But
I'm here.
what if I was going to ask you, today I'm probably going to have a conversation with 5 different heads of MSPs, of small
Sure.
MSPs, and they're all going to have the same problems. It's the reason we build a product, because when everybody's got the same problem, you've got something you could automate.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But at the same time, they're going to say, hey, so I got to talk to my clients about this. I got to see what they have to say. And sometimes it's difficult to make them understand what's going on with security. And I'll say,
Yeah,
I need to, the people that you're serving. What I know, and I'm here to serve you. And what I'll say is, I can support and I can help in any way, but only you have the key to unlock the right analogy for your client,
Yeah.
because it's not going to be you explaining technically what happens. It's going
Well,
to be an analogy.
that's it.
And
I mean,
yeah,
I live
yeah.
on analogies, right? Like I
Hmm.
paint with words and analogies because of the core challenge. And somebody made a post on LinkedIn a while back that was
Hmm.
incendiary in a way against creators and saying,
Mm.
are we focusing on the wrong people? Because I focus on the educating the MSP. I focus on educating the practitioner. I don't focus on the small business because
Yeah.
that's not where I need to. And the argument was we're doing ourselves a disservice by only focusing in an echo chamber. And the argument that was made that I think stood out the best was, no, I don't ask for my nuclear engineer, for my thermal engineer to explain the way that this has been designed for this outcome and this engineering use case and help me understand thermodynamics and the laws of these types of metals react. Like, no, I expect that they're going to handle that. There's a certain amount of professionalism that's there. We don't have that luxury in our world. We aren't seen
Hmm.
as that engineer. We aren't seen as that CPA.
Right.
We aren't seen as that, right, a doctor or attorney. We're seen as what we are today, which is this infighting, invariable or variable degree of capabilities and understanding
Hmm.
of the world and this massive breadth of an unprofessional world. And that's where we are. And so we feel like we have to educate our client about this because we feel like we have to sell them on every piece of it. But at the end
Hmm.
of the day, if we fast forward, again, luxury of a theorist, if we fast forward, at some point you're just trusting when Tara says these are the things we need to do, and
Yeah.
I don't want you to explain them to me. And to your point, all I need then is just the analogies to help me understand those pieces of what I'm doing here, so you can understand that we're not calculating an R factor based on how many moles of metal based on the specific gravity of
Mm.
water, heat of water at 4.184 joules per gram degree Celsius, and how that means that I need this many
Yeah.
joules of. We're not getting into that. So yeah, I agree with you.
I love it. And I sit here and I think you and I both do this. We do this with our backgrounds. Like, I mean, like get a little psychology here and like think about what it means to be a woman in cybersecurity. You want to take a
Hmm.
look around here. You want to see some
Yeah, sure. The
skins of
plastering
the
of
of the
paper
certificate.
behind the
Oh yeah, I have
yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah,
C's
yeah.
behind my name at this point. And the
I'm
signaling
eventually
that
just
I
gonna
do.
do
And
chemical denotation. By the way, Tara. At some
oh,
point, I'm just
I
gonna be
love
like
it.
C4, 8,
Mm.
9, S. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah,
BTA.
yeah. It'd be awesome, dude.
Is it-
Yeah.
and we signal in different ways, right? Like, I'm a woman in cybersecurity, and if there's no other way to do this, I signal it with the dead skins of the certifications I've
Yeah, I get
conquered
it.
hung on the wall
Yeah.
behind me, right?
Sucks that that's the way
You're
this is, but yeah.
you're
To your
signaling
point.
it, with, the badges, the security conferences you've been to, and the projects that you do. Like, we signal this in certain ways to try to get our credibility out there, so that
Yep.
I sit here and I think about an incredible woman. Her name is Cindy Cohn. She's the executive director of the EFF, and I once asked her
Okay.
for advice. And I said, "What's the best advice you've ever had, heard, and want to give to me as a woman in this field?" And she said, "By the time you walk in the door, it's too late to establish your power." And I went, "Damn, I need to walk away and sit down for a minute."
Just to chew
And
that out.
just
Just to
just chew that
understand.
for a
Yeah. Just
second.
to
Yeah,
marinate in it. Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think about that a lot, and I think to myself, what we do, we try so hard to signal reliability,
Yeah.
professionalism,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the C's and the S's and the I's and everything like that behind us,
Yeah.
and yet we
Over
don't
there.
even have the most basic, simple certification body as an industry that taps masters in thermal engineering. You know what? Got a master's in political
I
science.
do
That ain't
love
gonna
it.
help me up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The GX pen from SANS might do a little bit, but it just depends on who I'm
Sure.
talking to, and that's
It's
the
all
problem.
relative context, isn't it? To your point, and
Exactly.
go look at
How do
Paul
you just?
Jeremy's cert chart. There's
Yeah.
4,000 of them in there,
Oh
right? It's a big
God.
smattering of things.
It's
Ugh.
glorious. Yeah, it's real shocking.
Yeah,
We got some wise asses over here in the
yeah, it's
comments.
good
I love
stuff.
it.
It's good stuff. Yeah, I love
I love it.
it.
It's on you. So now that we've got this concept, and my God, I'm going to need to have you back again. And you know what I'm going to ask you, Matt, is like one day, and I'll ask you again. But I swear to God, if I ever have to get sick and I can't do this, I swear I'm going to ask you to be my guest host.
I'm
This is
in. I'll
great.
be glad to.
I love
I'll
it.
put. I'll have to get cat eye glasses and stuff, so like I have some modifications that have to
I love
exist.
it.
But I could do it.
Oh
I could
yeah.
do it.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah.
send you this. It's called
Maybe
Mac
a red
Ruby Woo.
wig.
It's a
See if I
great.
can
It's
pull
the
this
best of
over
the.
my head. I don't think this
Yeah.
reaches quite far
Yeah.
enough for this to work.
Comb it over.
A comb over beard. Yeah, it's glorious.
So
Yeah, red beard
we
dye,
got.
exactly.
I would love to know. Is there for people that would like to reach out to you, that would like to hear what you're doing and
Yeah.
where they can talk more to you, get some help from you, from your company? Would you like to give us a little bit of kind of how to find you and how to reach out to you?
Yeah, I occupy the CyberMatt Lee space pretty much everywhere. So cybermattlee.com. My LinkedIn is at Cyber Matt Lee. Twitter, I don't do much there, is Cyber Matt Lee. But ultimately, it's mostly LinkedIn. That's where I live, is predominantly there. Some of the things I'm working on, if anybody's interested, is yeah, it's so good. So my photographer Laura took this picture, and I was making a face at her because she was changing the lens, and then she snapped it, and I was like, "That is my headshot." It's so good. Anyways, I digress. Yeah, so that's what I use. But anyways, I digress. So thank you, Laura. She's the artist behind that headshot. It was just too perfect. I'm working on a mapping of the CIS safeguards, right? The 153 safeguards in CIS, breaking them into their taxonomical components, the underlying pieces that make that safeguard tick. What are they asking for? What are the components being asked for? And then taking that mapping and making a visual representation of the controls and safeguards and how they interact with each other, Tara. So like how this one's dependent on that one. And we're releasing that, but I'm doing it in the intention to build a mapping of vendors' products to their taxonomical capabilities. And it goes back to that dumbing down society by saying, we protect against all threats. How? And what of the 5,000 things I need to deal with are you even talking about? And most don't know. And so that's one of the projects I'm working on. It is an open working group. I've got many of the friends that you know and love involved in that. So anyways, yeah, very cool. Thank you so much for giving me that platform to answer that.
Absolutely. And it has been an absolute joy. You get now, sir, the very last question that I love to ask everybody. And this is the question. I've gotten some wonderful answers from people on this one before.
Okay.
No pressure or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm not going to even feel like I have to perform here in any way.
No, don't whatsoever. Okay, so alternate universe, Matt Lee.
Okay.
You don't do this for a living. You took a different turn, when you were younger, and you have a different career, a different life, and it makes you so happy. What is alternate Matt Lee doing as a job, as a career, for fulfillment, for joy? I've heard blacksmith and starship captain and everything imaginable, but what would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
I'll start it because I'm me and say I would really feel like it sucks because I have a mission. I don't have a career. I don't have a job. I have a mission, one that I probably don't win. And that for me is like really important. It's what makes me fulfilled. That said, though, I'll surprise you. I would be riding motorcycles with my dog. In fact, I'm actually trying to build some of this life. My dog, I built a platform for my Jerby and Shepsky to ride on my dirt bike. And I would be making YouTube videos and creating content that means nothing to humanity but my own fun and enjoyment and funding that. So I would probably be making motorcycle videos with my wife and my dog. I would be the alternate universe, with no meaning or purpose, which might suck. But
I will. I've got a bright red 1100cc V-Star 2007 V-Star.
Oh, nice,
and
fun.
I will join you for at least part of that way.
Let's do it.
So
we'll do a meetup.
Point. It's gonna be amazing.
We'll work together. It'll be great. We'll do a collab.
Oh, absolutely. Well, now I'm imagining the way that we enter the stage for that talk we're going to do together.
All right, good. I will work on my stoppies, and you work on your stoppies, and we'll see if we can do some fun on the stage. It'd be a blast.
Meatloaf. I get to be the meatloaf one, though. Okay.
Could you imagine my dog in a stoppie, though? That would be really scary. She'd be out on the straps, just off the platform. Anyways, doggles and.
Oh my God! All right, Matt, my friend, what a joy to have you with us this week. Thank you so much for bringing your trademark sense of joy and love and mission to this. It is wonderful to get a chance to talk to you.
My friend.
Folks, it's been a joy to have you with us here this week. Thank you so much. Thanks for letting us talk to the concerns and issues that are really facing MSPs in this world and every other, because we've gone on to the alternate timeline at this point. So have a wonderful week. Take care of yourself. Take care of your friends. We're going to talk to you soon. Bye just for now.
This is so fun. Thank you.